Welcome to the RSP Film Room. I'm Matt Waldman with the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. This is not a video about Gardner Minshew. In fact, I would just try to forget the fact that it's any quarterback specifically in this film. We're going to be talking about how we evaluate accuracy and depth when it comes to quarterback play. This is for people who want to geek out about evaluation or want to learn a little bit more about it than just simply watching it on TV. So for all you people who are already football geniuses out there, you know everything. You don't need to watch this, or maybe you do. But what we're going to look at here is this. Just talk about one play and how you define criteria, because defining criteria is very important, and it's something that's often missed in the NFL. It's not done well enough in the NFL, and a lot of the media evaluations that we see out there are based on the NFL system of defining criteria. Do they write down exactly what they're looking for? Do they write it down in depth? Do they really define in depth what happens here? And I can tell you that they don't. I've seen scouting reports. I know scouts. I know people who work in that area. And I can tell you that their evaluations aren't built on great process management. And part of good process management as a best practice is that you define your criteria clearly. So how does that affect this simple play that works up the left sideline for a long pass for a touchdown? Well, let's take, for example, how do you define this? Is this a deep ball? Well, some people might define this even at the highest levels of football. They might define this and say, Gardner, the player who's made this throw, if these were the types of throws we saw all the time from him, he's a good deep ball thrower. Really? Okay. Let's start with, how about we start with depth of the field range? How do we define the range of that? Is this a good deep throw because of how long it, how much space the ball covered? Or is it from the line of scrimmage? If you throw it, if you look at the box score, this is a 50-yard pass, 50-yard touchdown. Box score says so. All right, that's fine. But there's not a lot of context to that box score definition. So if you're just going to say he's an accurate quarterback because if you look at his box scores, he has 50, 60, 70, 80-yard touchdowns all the time. He's a really good deep ball thrower. Doesn't give you the context you need. Let's give it a little more context. Say you just limit it to really from the line of scrimmage to where the player caught the pass, because that's really where the pass was caught. You're looking at it from that standpoint, and it's a 35-yard throw. Is that actually a deep range throw? Some may define that as the case. Some may not have a clear enough definition at all to tell you what that is. Personally, this is not a deep throw for me because I define the ranges of the field for depth and range of throws in 14-yard increments. So this is a 43-yard throw. This is on the cusp of deep, but it might technically be more in the deep end of the vertical game. I defined it as short, intermediate, vertical, and deep. Now the vertical game to me is close to the deep game, but it's one that's reliant on really quick drops and to be able to deliver the ball one-on-one where there's not going to be safety help like this one here against this one high safety. On these types of throws, you can stretch the field this way, but it's not in that mid 40 to 50, 55, 60-yard range, which a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL can meet accurately. So defining your ranges of the field is important, and a lot of teams don't do that. It's just kind of an assumption. And when you get to a point where maybe the player is at the deep range of the vertical game, but not quite accurate enough in the deep game, well, what happens if you have an offense where your team, your offensive coordinator, coaching staff has created plays that are, reliant on really being able to stretch the field beyond 45 yards, and your quarterback's accuracy is shaky after 40. But your scouts and your GM and your scouting director all scouted the player in question who's going to be starting for you. You scouted him to be a good deep ball thrower, but you didn't define the deep game clearly enough. There's one problem right there, and it's a realistic problem where there's not a connection point between your scouts and your coaches. That can be a problem. It's a realistic one. We see it in the regular world all the time when it comes to how things are defined and what the real definition should be. People not being on the same page, it can impact the person that you employ. Because now you've brought him on with the expectation that he's a good deep ball thrower. And it turns out that your offense isn't a match for him because guess what? He can't throw the ball beyond 40 yards without it being, a contested situation. So let's talk about accuracy now. Well, we've talked about range. Is this an accurate throw? A lot of people would look at this and say, yeah, because the receiver caught it and the defender couldn't stop it. Again, simple box score kind of look. Now, a little bit more depth to that is it's accurate enough because the receiver could catch it. All right. But how do you want to define accuracy? I think to me, you have to split it apart some. Bill Walsh would say this was not the type of accuracy we want from a quarterback. How do I know that? Well, the story that I tell often in some of these film rooms and elsewhere, and the one that's often told about him, is when Mike Holmgren complimented Joe Montana during a practice for completing a pass where Jerry Rice had to kind of turn and catch the ball in a deeper range like this. And Holmgren complimented him, and Walsh pulled Holmgren aside and said, don't tell him that. And Holmgren's like, why not? He goes, because it's not the accuracy we want. What we want is a pass that the receiver can catch in stride without having to adjust his frame back to the ball and has to make minimal adjustment to win the ball. And it's really just about running his route and not having to change the course or anything with the direction of catching the ball and being able to make a comfortable reach for the ball, without, in a way that doesn't have to do extra work other than doing the work he did to get open in the first place. Because he's open. This ball just needs to be laid over the shoulder so you can catch in stride. So if it's not that, to me, that would be defined as pinpoint accurate. This is not pinpoint accurate. So how do you define it? Well, I have 4 different categories in a sense. There are really 3 for the quarterback, and then one is added when I track for receivers. First is pinpoint. This is not that. We just defined it. The second is what this is, general accuracy. The receiver should be expected to catch this ball. No question. But it's going to require him to do a little bit of work within expectation to catch the ball. In this case, he had to turn, slow down, turn, and elevate to make the catch. Now, he didn't have to elevate to an extreme height. He didn't even have to reach his hands, over his head to make the catch. He didn't have to extend away from his frame in any uncomfortable way. But he still had to slow down and turn in towards the coverage. So this is generally accurate. You don't want a quarterback with a lot of general accuracy in certain ranges of the field if you're expecting pinpoint, because the coverage gets a lot tighter in the NFL. So this is why I look at pinpoint and general accuracy and separate the two, because it helps you project to the NFL. Because if the quarterback here has gaudy stats, but he's only generally accurate, and it's because he has receivers who are just outrunning everybody on a level that you're not going to see in the NFL, then you're not going to get a really accurate assessment about the accuracy of the quarterback. So you want to look at the separating between pinpoint and general accuracy. The other area is difficult catch and inaccurate. And they're really the same thing to me. Inaccurate is that you cannot expect the receiver to do reasonable work to make the catch. So maybe in this case, say the receiver had to fully extend his arms over his head and arch his back beyond a comfortable range to catch this ball. Or that the ball was short and he had to leap over the top of the defender and reach down, beyond the defender's chest while over the top of the defender's head to make this catch. Or he had to spin and fully extend to the sideline where his body's almost parallel to the ground and have to do it at the last moment. And he catches that ball. Well, you wouldn't expect him to catch this ball within reason, so that to me is a difficult catch, because otherwise it would be what I would term an inaccurate throw, a ball that you don't expect the receiver to catch. So you've got pinpoint accuracy, general accuracy, and then you have inaccurate, or if the receiver happens to catch what's an inaccurate ball, it's a difficult catch, and you give more credit to the receiver there. And if the receiver drops that type of play, then I would say that I wouldn't count it as a drop. I'd count it as basically it was a difficult target. It was a missed target that he couldn't catch, or I would categorize it further and say difficult targets dropped, so that you categorize that in a way where you can really refine, I'm looking for a go-to receiver who can win the ball when it's not completely accurate, or make really difficult plays, because I may be working with a quarterback in my offense who isn't very accurate in this range of the field. Or I have a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball up, and we like that because we think we can find some receivers who can win in these physical, in physical coverage situations. So again, how you define that helps you determine who you're looking for and who's going to be the best fit for your team. And it also helps you get a clearer sense of, again, how this player plays. So we're looking at Gardner Minshew here, and you're seeing the depth, which is 43 yards. I'd say the high end of the vertical game, which means certain types of coverages he's going to be able to stretch the field. But he's general accuracy on this particular play, it tells you that his limit of his accuracy is probably within 40 yards and below. Probably in the high 30s is what you'd be looking at here, depending on, what more you watch here. But if this were in a vacuum, I'd say we're seeing a player at his upper limit of his accuracy here, and it's kind of stretched at this point because it was a generally accurate throw. So, looking at it from that standpoint, no, I would say he's not proven on, if these were all the types of plays we saw with him, I would say no, he's not a proven deep ball thrower with accuracy. Now, the next thing you have to consider is, for Gardner Minshew, is did he have to make this throw under pressure? What's a throw under pressure? Was this a throw under pressure? You could say, well, the defender was within a couple of steps of him when he released the ball. Well, to me, that's not a throw under pressure. The throw didn't force him to alter his throwing motion. He didn't take a hit. The pressure wasn't apparent before he released the ball. Now, you could say, well, it is here, but he's not seeing that. He might see the flash of the color, but he's already letting that ball go, and the defender's at least 2 to 3 steps away. So you also have to define that. Is he throwing the ball under pressure? Is he throwing the ball from a platform stance? Or is he having to move while he's throwing? Is the movement a design movement like a rollout where there's a form to it? Or is he having to throw the ball off platform where he's leaning back off his back foot, or jump throwing, or throwing across his body from some kind of angle that isn't necessarily coached or taught in a traditional context? Because all those things make a difference and color how you look at the range of his accuracy as well as the quality of that accuracy, as does the pressure. So you're looking just on one play. When you define what you're looking at, you can be defining the range, the quality of the accuracy, the type of setup the quarterback's throwing from, and the context of whether there's pressure or no pressure. And then you can also be looking at, is he playing against zone or is he playing against man? That's a lot of different little things to look at for a simple play that most of the time would take 30 seconds to a minute for me to comment on to you in an RSP film room. But just to explain this, we're bordering on 15 minutes here right now. So think about that. When you define things clearly, it helps you define things for the audience that you are aiming for. And it helps overall with an evaluation process. And when teams don't have this evaluation process, this is why they get players wrong. Because it's not necessarily that the player isn't talented enough. It's that he may not be talented enough for his system. He may be miscast in his system because the coach and the scouts and the GM and the owners might not be on the same page about how they're defining the criteria of what they need for their team. Thanks again for watching. For more RSP film room videos, you can check out my YouTube channel, Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, and my site, www.mattwaldmanrsp.com.